The fluorescent lights of the Grand Central Medical Bay hum with a low, agonizing frequency, the kind of sound that vibrates in your teeth before it reaches your ears. On the stainless steel gurney lies a woman who, for all intents and purposes, is a ghost. She was found wandering the subway tracks at 3:14 a.m., her eyes wide, pupils fixed, staring at a world no one else can see. She doesn't scream, she doesn't speak, she doesn't even flinch when the paramedics prick her skin. To the NYPD, she is just another Jane Doe lost to the city's mental health crisis. But when Dr. Eris Thorne, a consulting neuropathologist, leans over her, he notices something the first responders missed. Behind her left ear, hidden beneath a matted layer of blonde hair, is a surgical port. It's not a medical shunt for draining fluid. It's a high-bandwidth neural interface, a piece of proprietary hardware that shouldn't exist outside a top-tier research laboratory. It is clean, titanium-rimmed, and shows signs of recent heavy use. "She's not catatonic," Thorne whispers to the detective on duty. "She's empty. It's like someone went into her hard drive and hit select all, and then delete." This is the starting point of our investigation. The woman, eventually identified through a hidden micro-tattoo as Elena Ross's former source, is the first physical evidence of a crime that laws haven't even been written to cover yet: the theft of a human soul. Elena Ross, an investigative journalist known for dismantling pharmaceutical giants, had been tracking a series of strange disappearances for months. Her notes, recovered later from a secure cloud server, describe a pattern of emotional harvesting. She didn't believe people were just being killed. She believed they were being farmed. The victims weren't chosen for their money or their status. They were chosen for their capacity to suffer. The documentary shifts its focus to Elena's last recorded video log. She looks tired, the dark circles under her eyes deep enough to be bruises. She speaks into a grainy webcam, her voice trembling but certain. "They call it the Lethe Clinic," she says, glancing over her shoulder at the door of her apartment. "They promise to take away your darkest days, your grief, your assaults, your accidents. They tell you that you can walk out of their doors light as a feather, with the trauma erased from your synapses. And it's true, they do take it away, but they don't destroy it. They package it, they refine it, and then they sell it to people who want to feel something, anything, even if it's someone else's nightmare." As we look at the medical scans of the Jane Doe, we see the physical toll of this process. The hippocampus, the seat of memory and emotion, is riddled with microscopic scarring. It looks like a battlefield. The woman on the table isn't just a victim of an assault, she is the residue of a commercial transaction. Somewhere on the dark web, her most terrifying moments are being downloaded by a subscriber in a high-rise penthouse who is currently experiencing her fear with the clarity of a first-person dream. The investigation into the Lethe Clinic begins not with a warrant, but with a leak, a single file sent to Elena Ross's inbox titled The Catalog. It wasn't a list of names, it was a list of vivid experiences. Entry 402, Death by Drowning, Simulated. Entry 815, Loss of an Only Child, Authentic. Entry 1092, The Patient Zero Loop. The price for entry 1092 was listed in Bitcoin, equivalent to nearly $400,000. The buyer wasn't paying for a video, they were paying for the raw neural data of a human being's complete mental collapse. And as the police begin to trace the serial number on the Jane Doe's port, the trail leads directly to the most prestigious address in the city's medical district. The hunt for the memory vulture has officially begun, and the clock is ticking for Elena Ross, who has suddenly gone silent. The Lethe Clinic doesn't look like a dungeon, it looks like a spa for the soul. Located on the 44th floor of a glass and steel monolith in Manhattan, it greets its visitors with soft ambient music, the scent of expensive sandalwood, and walls painted in serenity blue.
But as Elena Ross's recovered audio files reveal, the beauty of the lobby is a mask for the industrial-scale cruelty occurring just 3 floors below in the basement levels, which don't appear on the elevator's digital display. I followed one of the technicians, Elena's voice narrates over a flickering hidden camera shot of a sterile hallway. They don't use anesthesia in the traditional sense. They use a neural blocker that keeps the motor functions paralyzed, but leaves the sensory cortex wide open. They want the victim to feel everything. If the victim is numb, the data is flat. Fear is the spice that makes the product valuable. The investigation uncovers the harvesting architecture, the proprietary system used by the clinic's founder, Dr. Julian Vane. Vane, a disgraced neurosurgeon who once claimed he could cure human misery, had pioneered a method of using liquid-cooled fiber optics to scrape the neural pathways. In a traditional memory, neurons fire in a specific sequence. Vane's tech captures that sequence in real time, converting biological electricity into high-fidelity digital files. But there was a problem with the early batches. Memories taken from willing patients, those who actually wanted to forget their grief, were often dull. The human brain has a natural defense mechanism that muffles old trauma over time. To get the premium-grade content the dark web elite demanded, Vane needed fresh trauma. He needed victims who weren't looking to forget, but who were being forced to experience something new and horrific. The documentary footage cuts to an interview with a whistleblower, a former IT specialist for Lethe, whose face is obscured and voice distorted. We started seeing source acquisitions on the ledger, the whistleblower whispers. People who weren't patients, they were donors, homeless youths, immigrants with no records, and eventually anyone who stumbled too close to the truth. We weren't just a clinic anymore, we were a slaughterhouse for the mind. As Detective Thorne and his team raid a secondary server farm linked to Vane, they find the terrifying reality of the memory auctions. On a hidden server, they find a live bid for a file titled The Journalist's Epiphany. The timestamp is from only 6 hours ago. The file contains the sensory data of someone realizing they are being hunted. The pounding heart, the cold sweat, the frantic breath. It was Elena Ross. The realization hits the investigators like a physical blow. Elena hadn't just been investigating the memory vulture, she had been captured to become his masterpiece. The clinic wasn't just hiding its tracks, it was turning the investigation itself into content. Every step Thorne takes, every fear Elena feels while running for her life, is being recorded and sold to high-level subscribers who are watching the hunt through her own eyes. The chapter ends with the discovery of Elena's car, abandoned in a parking garage. Inside, her phone is missing, but taped to the steering wheel is a single handwritten note that simply says, "Thank you for the data." The Jane Doe in the hospital starts to convulse, not from a seizure, but because someone is remotely accessing the port in her skull, using her brain as a relay to send a message to the police. Through her vocal cords, a distorted, synthesized voice speaks. "You're all part of the collection now."
The investigation takes a sickening turn when the cybercrimes unit managed to decrypt a partial list of subscribers to the Lethe Clinic's hidden network. These weren't just random internet trolls or basement-dwelling deviants. The digital breadcrumbs led to the mahogany row offices of venture capitalists, the penthouse suites of tech moguls, and even the private residences of several high-ranking public officials. One name stood out: Arthur Sterling, a retired Supreme Court justice known for his stoic demeanor. When detectives arrived at his estate, they found him in a state of sensory overload. He was wearing a prototype neural headset, his eyes rolling back in his head, his body twitching in rhythmic tremors. He wasn't just watching a crime, he was living it. On his screen, a progress bar read 88% synaptic synchronization. He was currently experiencing the memory of a house fire, the heat, the smell of melting plastic, the sound of screams, all filtered through the nervous system of a victim who had died 3 years prior. It's not just about the thrill, Detective Thorne notes in his audio log, his voice thick with disgust. It's about control. These people have everything. They've tasted every luxury, bought every pleasure. The only thing they haven't experienced is the raw, unfiltered terror of the underclass. It's a new form of digital colonialism. They don't want to help the suffering. They want to consume it like a vintage wine. While the police deal with Sterling, the focus shifts back to Elena Ross. Through a series of fragmented GPS pings from a dead man switch Elena had installed in her watch, the investigation moves toward an industrial laundry facility on the edge of the city. The facility is a front owned by a shell company with direct ties to Dr. Julian Vane. Inside the facility, the atmosphere is suffocating. The air is thick with steam and the smell of bleach, but beneath it lies the metallic tang of a medical laboratory. Thorne finds a room filled with incubators, not for babies, but for memory stability. Rows of glass tanks hold neural tissue suspended in a glowing, nutrient-rich blue fluid. This is where Vane stores the data before it's compressed into the final product. But then Thorne finds something even more disturbing. A series of sync logs reveal that the clinic has been experimenting with bidirectional memory transfer. They aren't just taking memories out, they are testing how to put them back in. The logs mention Project Chimera. The goal was to take the trauma of one victim and implant it into another, creating a human being with a manufactured past, a person whose entire identity is a collage of other people's worst nightmares. The chapter reaches its climax when Thorne discovers a video file titled The Ross Extraction Preview. He plays it, and the screen shows Elena strapped to a chair, the titanium port already integrated into her skull. She looks directly into the camera. She isn't crying. She isn't begging. She is reciting a series of numbers: her social security number, her mother's birthday, her childhood address. She is trying to anchor herself to her own reality before the Vulture sweeps it away. "You're too late, Detective," Dr. Vane's voice echoes through the facility's intercom system. "The Elena Ross you're looking for is already being partitioned. By morning, her career, her memories of this investigation, and her love for the truth will be nothing more than ones and zeros in the hands of my highest bidder. She will walk out of here with a clean slate, and she won't even remember your name." Suddenly, the Jane Doe at the hospital flatlines. At the exact same moment, every screen in the laundry facility begins to flash the same message: upload complete. The hunt for a living woman has suddenly turned into a search for a hollow body. The air in the police precinct is heavy with a sense of failure. The upload complete message wasn't just a taunt, it was a digital execution. Detective Thorne sits in the darkness of the evidence room, surrounded by Elena's belongings. He realizes that the Lethe Clinic isn't just selling memories, they are selling the void. The most expensive product isn't the trauma itself, but the absence of it, the ability to commit a crime and then pay to have the memory of it professionally scrubbed from your own mind. They aren't just vultures, they are the ultimate cleaners. They provide the sin, and then they sell the absolution. The breakthrough comes from an unlikely source. The Jane Doe at the hospital who flatlined wasn't actually dead. Her brain hadn't stopped working, it had simply rebooted. In the brief window before her systems collapsed, she had subconsciously encoded a location into the rhythmic blinking of her eyelids, a form of neural Morse code. It points to a decommissioned Cold War-era bunker beneath an old psychiatric hospital in upstate New York. As Thorne and a tactical unit descend into the bunker, the documentary narration shifts to a more frantic, claustrophobic tone. The walls are lined with server racks that hum like 1,000 bees. The heat is intense. The cooling systems are struggling to keep up with the massive data transfer. This is the mainframe of agony. In the center of the room, they find the auction block. It's a circular platform with 3 chairs. In one sits Dr. Julian Vane, his eyes glowing with the reflection of a dozen monitors. In the second sits a high-ranking political donor, his Neuralink glowing bright blue. And in the third,
is Elena Ross. She looks like a porcelain doll. Her eyes are open, but the light behind them is gone. She is the vessel. Vane is currently demonstrating a live memory swap. He is taking a decade of the donor's corruption, bribes, and guilt-ridden secrets and dumping them into Elena's empty mind. In exchange, the donor is receiving Elena's integrity, her courage, and her memories of her childhood, the purest data Vane could find. "Look at them, Detective," Vane says, not even looking up as the tactical team levels their weapons at him. "It's a perfect trade. The world gets a politician who feels like an innocent child, and a broken journalist who carries the weight of 1,000 sins she never committed. Who are you going to arrest? The man who has no memory of his crimes, or the woman who is currently confessing to all of them in her own mind?" The horror of the situation is absolute. If Thorne kills Vane, the connection might sever, leaving Elena's consciousness scattered across the dark web in a million encrypted fragments. If he does nothing, the Elena Ross who fought for the truth will be erased, replaced by a synthetic criminal designed to take the fall for the elite. Thorne notices a manual override lever at the back of the room, a neural kill switch, but the label on it warns of a 40% chance of permanent brain damage to anyone connected. He looks at Elena. She is trembling, her mouth forming silent words. She isn't begging for her life. She is trying to say, delete. Even in her fragmented state, she would rather be nothing than a repository for the Vulture's filth. Thorne lunges for the lever. The screen cuts to black as a high-pitched electronic scream fills the bunker.
The sound that followed the pulling of the lever wasn't an explosion. It was a silence so absolute it felt like a physical weight. When the neural kill switch engaged, the bunker's lights flickered from a violent red to a cold, sterile white. Dr. Julian Vane slumped forward, his eyes glazed, not dead, but his mind overwritten by the very feedback loop he had created. He became a victim of his own architecture, his consciousness lost in a recursive loop of his client's worst nightmares. But the documentary's focus remains on Elena. When the paramedics finally detached the titanium port from her skull, she didn't wake up screaming. She didn't wake up at all for 3 weeks. When she finally opened her eyes in a high-security recovery ward, she looked at Detective Thorne and didn't recognize him. She didn't recognize her own name. The kill switch had successfully stopped the upload of the donor's crimes, but it had also acted as a digital cauterization. The Elena Ross who walked into that bunker is gone, a forensic neurologist explains to the camera, his voice weary. What's left is a tabula rasa, a blank slate. She has the motor skills of an adult, the vocabulary of a journalist, but no personal history. She is a woman who knows how to write, but has no stories to tell. The aftermath of the memory vulture case sent shockwaves through the global elite. With Vane catatonic and the mainframe of agony partially corrupted, the evidence against the subscribers was messy. Dozens of high-ranking officials resigned, citing health reasons, but without the victims' coherent testimonies, most of whom were left in catatonic states like the original Jane Doe, prosecutions were nearly impossible. The documentary ends with a chilling discovery. 6 months after the raid, Thorne received an anonymous package. Inside was a single high-capacity data drive. When played, it contained a phantom memory, a piece of data that had been floating in the cloud, unassigned to any user. It was a memory of the bunker raid, but seen through the eyes of the AI system itself. In the final seconds of the recording, we see Elena Ross being wheeled out on a stretcher. As the camera zooms in on her face, her eyes track toward a hidden lens in the hallway. For a fraction of a second, she blinks in a rhythmic, intentional pattern. Experts analyzed the footage for months. The blink translated to a single word in Morse code: recording. The implication is terrifying. Elena might have lost her past, but her neural port had acted as a two-way street. While Vane was trying to delete her, she was subconsciously caching the entire Lethe database into a hidden partition of her own brain. She isn't empty. She is a walking, breathing, encrypted hard drive containing the secrets of the world's most powerful people. The final shot of the documentary shows Elena sitting on a park bench looking at the city skyline. She looks peaceful, almost happy, but as she watches a group of people walk by, her eyes narrow with a strange analytical precision. The memory vulture might have been dismantled, but the collector has simply changed forms. Elena Ross is no longer a journalist. She has become the ultimate archive of human sin, waiting for the right moment to be decrypted. As the screen fades to black, a final text crawl appears. The Lethe Clinic's servers were never fully recovered. It is estimated that over 4,000 private experiences remain in circulation on the dark web. To this day, Elena Ross refuses to speak about her time in the bunker. Thank you for watching Payback Archives. If you enjoyed this story of justice and revenge, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next story.